it's been said that Matravers and Laverton, didn't want the railway in the town, but I mean, it seems it was bringing the coal from the Somerset coalfields more closely to be used in the woolen industry. It seemed rather bizarre that a clothier wouldn't have wanted an easier access of the railway. So I think that's a bit of a myth. So that was a building that has clothiers' connections, but it became a bank in the 20th century. Subsequently our post office, and is now converted to a hotel. Davies DIY store, and was a pub in the mid-19th century, a public house called the Bear. I keep having to flip through my notes, so I don't recall all the facts quite as well as I used to. It's the Bear Inn, but from 1850 it was occupied by James Neat, a plumber and glazier who had a tin plate works at the back. So again, you know, very much sort of workshop, industrial use within the town. And then where the High Street is now, built in about 1815, was a large substantial property called Fountainville. The Jeffreys family, who made their money through glove making, lived there for a time. And that house fell into decay and decline. There were hutments built there during the war. Gradually the rest of the remains of the building was pulled down in the 1960s when we had the new High Street development, which itself is looking pretty tired now. So there was a large substantial property there, and the grounds of that house extended right down to what is now West End. Anyway, we're now at the bottom of the Matravers Laverton garden of Westbury House, and here we've got the factory buildings, and this is a very imposing building, clear, sort of obvious factory looks very factory-like, so to speak. In 1801, John Matravers purchased the Angel Inn and the ground around it, and he set about building a factory, a woolen mill, for steam-driven engines. And this is a particularly significant fact. We believe that, I mean, with industrialisation and the development of steam engines, they were gradually being applied to factories around the country, and certainly in this area in Wiltshire. And there are earlier examples of steam engines being used in the woolen industry. But this is the earliest example that we know of a purpose-built factory for steam-driven machinery. So it's particularly significant. And although we can't be sure how significant it is nationally, and I don't think the research has been done into this, or maybe it's not easy to say, but it must be quite an early example in the country of a purpose-built factory for steam-driven machinery. That's quite an important feature, I think, in Westbury's history. It's a very imposing building, as we can see, now converted to flats. The boiler and engine shed stood at the north end, but Matravers went into insolvency in 1845, and the mill was converted to a flour mill, but reconverted in 1852 when Abraham Laverton, who'd been in the woolen industry, man born in Trowbridge, bought the factory and then started to develop it again, and it actually continued in use until 1969 under the Laverton name. The rest of the building site was filled in with single-storey buildings, and there's as you go into Church Street, you've probably seen it before, the single-storey buildings including a weaving shed dated 1868. There's a date stone on the building, so there was development going on. At Church Street, standing beside the Westbury swimming pool, which I'm sure all of you are aware is one of the oldest public swimming pools still in use in the country. It was presented to the town by W.H. Laverton to celebrate the Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria. We call it Westbury Swimming Pool now, but it was called Westbury Public Baths, and the reason for the plural there was that although there was all the swimming pool, there were also baths. There were 6 baths for men, 4 for women, because in that period there was very little internal sanitation in houses. Baths just weren't available in private homes, so public baths were provided. Local tradesmen were involved in its construction, but there was an architect, I think from Cardiff, who were the contractors and architects. And in fact, the memorial stone around the front of the building, and behind that a time capsule was placed with a copy of the plans of the building, the newspaper of the time, probably the Trowbridge Advertiser, the Wiltshire Times, the national paper, and the coinage of the day. On a building, it's very easy to take for granted, isn't it? You know, we go to the pool, we don't use the main front entrance any longer, we come in round the back, and in a narrow street, you don't often come down and bother to look up. But if you actually stand here and look at it, it's a remarkable design of 19th century. The facade is wonderfully constructed, with the medallion at the top of Queen Victoria, the Latin, the shell, it's spectacular. And the arms, the coat of arms of Westbury and of the Laverton family, and those are replicated inside the pool. Whenever I'm doing backstroke, you look up and see them. And you can see the original entrances for the men and the women to the various to their respective baths and changing areas.
The men have got a better entrance than the women.
Yes.
More grand, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes. But it is. And there's the swatches above the windows. The design is wonderful, really. And that's where the time capsule is buried behind the foundation stone.
Has it been looked at? Oh no, it's still there.
Yes, all the details of what's there behind is recorded in the newspaper account. But originally, the water was only changed once a week. It was supplied from the Bitham Spring. And when I did this walk, the first time I did this, one of the members on the group said that her father-in-law had said that they always preferred going to the pool at the beginning of the week when the water was clear and cold, rather than at the end when it was warm and cloudy.
No, it's very cold at the beginning of the week.
Yes.
I think ideally about Wednesday or Thursday, but it's warming up. It's lovely and warm. I think I did go at the end of the week. It was pretty filthy, but it was warm. Monday was bone chilling.
Dead now, but they used to come here in the winter. They used to board over the pool, and they used to have a proper ballroom dancing. Yes, and they come down.
I forgot to say that the swimming pool cost £5,000, which barely goes to its running costs for about a month or so nowadays. Anyway, that's the price of money and value of money. Well, I'll say a few words about Chantry Farm, but I almost forgot to mention this. When we think about the Lavertons and what they did for Westbury in terms of their munificence, Abraham Laverton provided the Laverton Institute in 1873. His nephew W.H. provided the swimming pool, but W.H. also converted this building here to a technical college. It was fairly short-lived, but in the 1890s it was a technical college for training in more technical skills and crafts and whatever. It didn't last very long, and then it was converted into to use as private houses, and they put an extra floor in, but originally it was just a two-storey building. Through the archway there was a room and building premises where we believe that the Westbury Rifle Volunteer Association or group met and trained. And so there again is, we now look at it as almost entirely a residential street. But if we look clearly a much older looking building here, we've got Chantry Farm. There's a date stone of 1723 above the door, but I don't know that that's probably a date of some alterations and updates, because it's a much older building. It's called Chantry Farm and Little Chantry because it was the farmhouse, the principal farmhouse of the manor of Westbury Chantry. Now, that was so named because the manor was associated with and became the property of the chanter or the precentor of the cathedral. Now, Salisbury Cathedral had several, as it still does, has religious, ecclesiastical people who ran the cathedral. There's the dean of the cathedral, the precentor, who actually deals with organising the choir and the music for the services of the cathedral. So an important personage in the cathedral. And these individuals involved with the cathedral were granted estates which they could enjoy, the income of which they could enjoy. And the manor of Westbury Chantry was held by the precentor or chantor, hence the name Chantry. And this was the farmhouse. The farmyard behind was the builder's merchant's yard for a time, and it's now been built over for accommodation, housing, and flats and whatever. But there was a farm. I mean, again, we think I've been talking about Westbury as an industrial town, but it's hard to imagine also farm to be right in the centre of the town. But there was a farm there, fields around, and also fields more distantly up towards Newtown and beyond, I suspect. But there was certainly farming land quite close into here. An interesting building facing it opposite there, which does again have woolen industry associations. There are workshops at the back, but it was again a clothier's house and property. A previous owner, whose name I forget now, but he lived there in the 1980s, 70s, 80s. Cook, that's the name.